Thank you for joining us as Levi continues our study on the Book of Beginnings, the first book of Moses called Genesis.
Okay, so tonight we're actually going to start Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. We're going to go through verse 6 and 7. I got 4 videos to show you, and we're going to be playing them online. And then we're going to then jump down to verses 13 and 14. We will come back to verses 8 through 12 next week and cover Nimrod and the Babylonian religions. So let's kick this off. So starting in verse 6 of chapter 10, it says, the sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Now, Canaan, his descendants, we're going to look later down the line because remember, Canaan's cursed. It didn't say the descendants of Ham was cursed. It says Canaan be cursed. But we are going to look at these nations here. The other thing is you got to remember Ham means hot. That's what it means in Hebrew, hot. I wouldn't recommend you calling your wife a ham, though. I don't think it'll go well. So let's break this down, who these people are. So Ham's descendants are in the regions of Africa, Arabia, Syria, the Holy Land, Israel, that's the Holy Land, and Mesopotamia. And that's that whole fertile crescent area of where life began. That's the region we're going to be looking at. Cush's descendants are called the Nubians. This is artifacts of the Nubians, how they look. This is a close-up version. So this is in a museum rendition of how they look and how the Nubian people were. And these are the Nubian people today. The Nubian people are in the region of Ethiopia. They are a dark-skinned people located in Ethiopia. Flag right here, and that's the location of Ethiopia. And you can see it's by Djibouti and Somalia and Eritrea and Sudan. This is Ethiopia. So then you have Sudan, and this is the northern Sudan flag. If you look at the map here, Sudan used to be one big region, and now it's southern Sudan and Sudan. And then you have also the Nubians located Egypt, southern Egypt. So they are in this region here, the Sudan, southern Egypt, and then into Ethiopia, moving farther down. So those are the Nubians. And if you're familiar, maybe online you're familiar with this, if not the group here, there was a movie that came out in 1965 called The 10 Commandments, where Yul Brynner was Pharaoh and Charleston Heston was Moses. Who's familiar with that movie? Okay, it's an older movie. So I'm going to show you this video clip that it actually shows the Nubian people in the clip, and you're going to see for yourself. So we're going to go ahead and play that before we move on to the next piece.
Yes, I can see him. Moses! Moses! Listen, Mehmet. Listen. Trumpets tell all the world he's come back. Hear them. And all their shouts are drowned by the beating of my heart. Do you hear, Memnet? The whole city calls his name.
I hear them, Nefertiri.
The Lord Moses, Prince of Egypt, son of the Pharaoh's sister, beloved of the Nile God, commander of the Southern The blessings of the god Amun-Ra be upon you, great prince. He has brought down the pride of Ethiopia. He has set his foot
old windbag.
He has raised Egypt to its
I agree with it.
May your name be exalted on earth, O conqueror, even as the sun is exalted in the heavens.
Welcome to my sister's son. We have heard how you took Ibis from the Nile to destroy the venomous serpents used against you when you laid siege to the city of Saba.
May my arms stay strong in your service, great city.
Who is this fair young god come into the house of Pharaoh?
No need to tell you how I share her joy at your return.
No need, my brother. Great one, I bring you Ethiopia.
Command them to kneel before Pharaoh.
Command what you have conquered, my brother. I bring the Ethiopian king and his sister in friendship, as an ally to guard our southern gates.
My son has dealt wisely with you, Ethiopia. Welcome as a friend.
Great king, I will ask but one favor of your friendship. This green stone from our mountains, that I may give it to your prince of Egypt, for he is kind as well as wise.
It is pleasing to the gods to see a man honored by his enemies.
And such a beautiful enemy.
See to their comfort.
Divine One, here is the full count of Ethiopia's tribute. Bearers! I'm sending down the Nile 20 full barges of such wealth as you see here. Logs of ebony and trees of myrrh, all for your new treasure city.
A handsome tribute indeed, Moses. Unfortunately, I have no new treasure city.
And you will have none. The stiff-necked slaves die more willingly than bend their backs in your service.
Why?
They believe a deliverer has come to lead them from their bondage.
Deliverer. Deliverer. He has been foretold by every falling star since my father's time. And now you make him an excuse for your failure to build my city.
I'm not one to make excuses. If you doubt me, let Moses build the city.
No. He's just trying to keep Moses away from your city.
Or you, perhaps. I think our roosters would crow more softly on another roof. Stand before me, both of you. Would you please your Pharaoh, Moses?
Your wish is my will.
Then you build my city.
Wise decision. A noble task.
Ramses, do you believe this slave deliverer is a myth?
What I believe is of no account. What matters is the slaves believe in him.
Of course. Then you too shall go to Goshen. Learn if this deliverer be a myth or a man. If a myth, bring him to me in a bottle. If a man, bring him to me in chains.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
Again, that's the 10 Commandments from 1956. I think I said 65, but it's 56. So Mitzrayim is this nation, Egypt. This is the Egyptian location, and then the Egyptian people right here. And then there's Put, who becomes the North African area. All right, that's not Egypt. So it would consist of countries and territories such as Algeria. All right, but before we get into there, we have the Maghreb. Northern area, that's the descendants of Put. They become the Maghreb. Again, not the Mikrib, but the Maghreb. And then again, like I said, it becomes these territories, which is the first one's Algeria. This Algerian flag and the Algerian location and the Algerian people. And so this year, the Algerian people are celebrating a World Cup. And I read the article, and actually people died in the celebration because it was so intense. Because they're all about the World Cup and celebrating. All right. The next one is Libya. This is the country of Libya right here, and the nation. And again, you can see it by Chad, Niger, and Algeria, and the Libyan people. And this is them as well, the Libyans. And who remembers Back to the Future? Remember that part? The Libyans, I don't know how they found me. The Libyans, Back to the Future. And then you have Mauritania. This is the Mauritanian flag and the Mauritanian location. And it's a very interesting nation because it's very poor, but they actually have a huge shipyard where ships, it's their graveyard. And the China brings it in and they have all these ships in here. So this is the Mauritanian. Now, the Mauritanian people have some interesting traditions. So this right here is a Mauritanian bride. That's who she is. And so this is their dress. And the Mauritanians believe that the fatter the bride, the more luck she brings. Fatter the bride, the more luck she brings. Okay? So that is the belief system that they have. But they also have another belief system that you see in this picture here. They're celebrating because Mauritanians celebrate divorce. When a Mauritanian woman gets divorced, instead of it being something bad, they actually celebrate and they have a party and a barbecue and they write poetry about how disgusting the man was and how much of a loser he is and how he lost his luck and he lost his bride and his princess and all that stuff, all right? Very different from our culture when it comes to divorce, yet maybe some women do celebrate that way here. I don't know. But there it's looked upon as a huge celebration. This brings us to Morocco. This is the Moroccan flag and the Moroccan location. And again, here they are right here. You see West Sahara. There's Morocco, very close. It's about 8 miles from Spain. This northern region, they speak Spanish. These are the Moroccan people. And what this is right here, these are Moroccan wedding gowns and wedding headdresses. I don't know if these are actual Moroccan women. I don't know if these are, but these might be right here. And then this is a Moroccan wedding. On the wedding, the bride comes in on a throne and the man rides in on a horse. So that's how the wedding's done. Someone pointed out earlier that he does not look happy. And then we have Tunisia. And this is the Tunisian flag. And the location of Tunisia. Again, it's in the northern area by the sea, not too far from Sicily, Italy, and near Libya. And I believe these are the Tunisian people in this picture here. And again, this is the World Cup celebration, and I'll show you a different picture of them later. And then you have Western Sahara. This is the Western Sahara flag and the Western Sahara location. And again, Morocco claims that this is all theirs. But Western Sahara says, no, it's not, it's ours. And it was actually on November 14th, 1975, that Western Sahara broke off from Morocco and said they're their own nation. And these are the Western Saharas on their Independence Day. They're out there in the sun. It's very bright and hot. And then we have the descendants of Canaan. Now, we're going to look at them later, and they were wiped out by Israel and moving in. But we're going to look at them a little bit later and going into the descendants there. But I do want to show you the area they were in. So they were in Lebanon, and this is the Lebanese flag. This is a cedar tree, and the Lebanese location. And so here's Israel, here's Syria, here's Lebanon, and we're going to get into that later when we look at the descendants of Canaan. What I'm about to show you right now is actually a wedding from Lebanon, okay?
انتوا الكياسي انتوا الكياسي الذوق والاحساس انتوا البدر بالافق متجلي رحبوا معي مع اجمل عريسان صبا رضوان فهد ومحمود سليمان حمود.
So now we kind of get the image of what's going on there. Now looking at this and you're seeing that wedding, who would like to have a wedding like that? Anybody online want to comment in and say if they would like a wedding like that, or maybe to renew their vows that way? So next week. All right. Next week. All right. And the Lebanese, one of the things they really like about their weddings is also their cake. So this is their cake. They put the giant cakes. Even the smaller version of the cakes are really big too. So they really know how to go big with the wedding. All right. The other location that this was is Syria. There's the Syrian flag and the Syrian location. And as you see, it's again by Jordan and Israel. And then here is some Syrian kids. And so now we have a lot of Syrian refugees and the children. And then we also have here Jordan, Jordanian flag and the nation of Jordan. And Jordan is going to be a huge role play in the end because all the Jews in the Great Tribulation are going to flee into Jordan, into Petra to survive. And they're going to run out of Israel, but Jordan will survive the Antichrist. All right. They're also called the nation of Ammon. It's a three trifecta piece. And then these are the Jordanians. So this is a father's son, the camel. And then you have Israel, Israeli flag and the Israeli location. Not very big. And it's surrounded by Egypt and Jordan and Syria and Lebanon. And these are the Israelis celebrating their Independence Day. And then this is a Jewish wedding right here. And so you have the katuna, that's the wedding. And then you have the huppah, and that's what they're getting married under. And remember, it represents the chet, the new beginning, and the symbol of the male and the female being one. And then she, in the wedding, will circle him 7 times to bring down his wall and put up her own wall because he's the representation of the man and the representation of the weapon that watches for evil, because that's the job of the wife. Where the husband's called to be the high priest of his household, but the wife is to watch for evil, all right, and to help in that area. And the wedding lasts 7 days long in the ancient days, that it would be that way. And the father of the bride had to be prepared to serve food, whether it was 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 1 in the morning, and there always had to be wine ready. This is why, and the wedding of Cana, where they ran out of wine, and they're like, they ran out. It's a big deal because if you run out, it's a big no-no. All right. This brings us the closing of verse 6. Let's look at verse 7. And it says, the sons of Cush were Sheva, Havilah, Sabtha, Rama, Sabteka, and the sons of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. All right. So we're going to look at these. Now, Seba is Ethiopia. It's also pronounced Sheva. So the Ethiopian flag again and their location. And then here is some Ethiopian kids. And so these Ethiopians, there's Ethiopian Jews. They serve in the IDF. They have migrated to Israel. And we have Ethiopian Jews because of Solomon and the queen of Sheba or Sheba. It's also Yemen. So here's the Yemenis flag and the location of Yemen. And then if you were in the Marine Corps back in the day, you remember in 2000, the USS Cole in Yemen. All right. And then if you also remember the movie Rules of Engagement with Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel Jackson, and that takes place in Yemen at the embassy. And then the next nation that they are connected with is Oman. This is the Omani flag and the Omani location. And it's right next to Yemen. And it's right here by the UAE, which I've been there, and Straits of Hormuz and all that. And here's some Omanians. And so these are the men and what they look like. And they have your typical man dress because it's really hot. Keeps it cool and something you see if you go to the Middle East. Next would be Havilah. Havilah is the northern part of the Sahara. And we're looking at this right here. Havilah's descendants would be the Gatuli, which is G-A, you see behind me right there, G-A-E, T-U-L-I. And then the Gatuli people would look like this. This is an art rendition of a Gatuli woman. They were shepherds that took care of the flock, plus they were known for warriors and fighting. And then you have Sabtan, which became the Zagwa people, and that's spelled Z-A-G-H-A-W-A, Zagwa people. And this is them right here. They are known for riding camels. They're very good on camels. They here are protesting against what's happening to their people in Sudan and against the abuse of their women. And this is how they protest on camels, the Zagwa people. They are located in 3 areas in Chad, which this is the Chad's flag, but it looks like the Romanian flag because they have the identical flags. And here's Chad. Sorry, here's the Chad location of Chad. Then more towards the north, so northern Sudan, as you see the northern Sudan. And then they're also in a nation called Eritrea. That's where they ended up. And I'm going to show you 2 videos here. One video is going to be about the Zagwa people. As soon as that video is over, we're going to go right into the next video about Eritrea, all right?
A harsh land of rock and wind. 1,000 years ago, Zagawa nomads swept down from here and conquered the south, founding Chad's first empire, Kanem. Mustafa is a modern Zagawa nomad, and today his people lead Chad once again by way of President Idris Deby, a member of the tribe, and the Zagawa-dominated Chadian army. Mustafa's a part-time soldier, living his ancestors' traditions, the rough and tough world of camel herding.
We don't care about Chad or Sudan. Any place where there's pasture, that's our land. All the Zagawa people, whether here or in Sudan, are one.
In 1923, the British and the French drew a line right through this land, dividing the Zagawa people between Chad and Sudan.
Now the tribe leads not only the government of Chad, but also rebel groups across the border in Sudan. Along with cross-border influence, the Zagawa also have cross-border loyalties, especially toward the suffering of their people in Darfur.
Sudan is our number 1 enemy. I'm alive, but how many of my brothers did they kill? And they stole. How much money did they steal? Those people of Darfur are my brothers. If even one of them died, I should go fight for them.
Strong feelings that Chad's president Idris Deby can ill afford to ignore. He knows this land. The president was born here, trained as a rebel in Darfur, and fought his way to power across these valleys. Each year, new rebel groups challenge Deby and his government from these same borderlands. To survive, he has to shore up this area. In the remote Sultanate of Kabka on the Chadian frontier, Zagawa youth celebrate a wedding. Vibrant but illiterate, they're tens of kilometers from the nearest road, clinic, or school. The closest sign of the state is this shack, where hungry children walk hours to come learn the rudiments of French. President Deby created the Kabka Sultanate, if not to fill their stomachs, at least to fill their pride. He has to keep the base happy, or face revolution from this notoriously unstable borderland. May Welsh, Al Jazeera, Eastern Chad.
Yes, they eat the same food, look the same, have the same religion, speak kind of the same, and have the same general historical roots. But do not call these people Ethiopians.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. Did you know that Italy tried to take over parts of Africa? Yeah, and it didn't last that long and it didn't end very well. But it happened. But first, Eritrea prides itself on its location, and here's why. Eritrea is located on the Horn of Africa on the east side, bordering the Red Sea to the east, bordered by Sudan, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. In addition to the mainland domain, they also administer the Dahlak Archipelago, just off the coast, consisting of 124 small islands, only 2 of which are permanently inhabited, Nora and Dohul, as well as a few of the Hanish Islands that they had a huge dispute over Yemen with, and the South Red Sea Islands in the south. The country is divided up into 6 regions, with the capital and largest city, Asmara, located in the central Mekelle region. The country operates 5 main airports, the largest ones being Asmara, and the former capital when it was under the Italians, Massawa off the coast. Although Eritrea has the 2nd largest coastline along the Red Sea after Egypt, not many people live there. Other than the cities of Massawa and Assab, most Eritreans live inland, especially in the areas surrounding the capital. This is partially due to the fact that, like some other countries we'll cover in future episodes, Eritrea has a generally dry and inhospitable coast. I mean, the South Red Sea region is kind of classified as one of the hottest areas on the planet. Nonetheless, they take their coastline seriously. When you own land along one of the busiest trading routes on the planet, you tackle that bad boy and tariff it like a boss. I mean, unless your constituents kind of start hating you and then they put up an embargo, but hey, they'll come crawling back. They even set up camp and even have an exclave on the southernmost border with Djibouti on the Dumaira Peninsula because they were like, we want to get as close as we can to that Bab al-Mandab Strait. Home to quite a few archaeological sites like the ones in Kohaito, Matara, and Sanafe with the Aksumite ruins, many of which are yet to be explored, as well as a plethora of centuries-old churches, monasteries, mosques, and mausoleums hidden along the cliffs on the outskirts of towns. The point is, with whatever land that they do have, they work to the best of their ability to feed their ever-growing population. Let's explain. Now, yes, as mentioned before, many of the places in Eritrea's coast are generally hot and dry, which to no surprise is why the camel is actually the national animal. But that's only one part of the country. Surprisingly, they have quite a contrasting land makeup. Just like we mentioned in the Djibouti episode, the general area that Eritrea is located in is a hot mess when it comes to three tectonic plates, the Somali, African, and Arabian. All three of these converge into an area known as the Afar Triangle. Basically, the land is tearing itself apart. Eritrea is located right at the fork of the East African Rift, including the Danakil Depression shared with Ethiopia being labeled as the hottest place on Earth. Therefore, the rift creates coastal highlands. The results looks like a backwards rain shadow effect in which the coasts are dry and hot and the inland areas are fertile and green. This is also why the majority of the population lives inland. In addition, this gives Eritrea a few volcanoes, most of which are Holocene and extinct, but then again, Nabra was thought to be extinct until it kind of went buck wild in 2011. Inland, you can find a range of landscapes from subtropical rainforests like the ones at Filfil, or you can find green precipitous cliffs and canyons in the southern highlands. Despite the lush interior, there still is an issue with desertification and drought. The entire population is required by law, starting at age 15, to take a month off and terrace hillsides with rocks to prevent erosion and hold in moisture. 80% of the people live off of agriculture, in which crops like barley, beans, lentils, sorghum, and the interestingly small grain teff is grown. Animals thrive in many parts of the country, especially in the lush interior regions. Over 500 different species of birds can be found, as well as mammals like warthogs, aardvarks, hares, gazelles, and hyraxes. In terms of predators, Eritrea seems to have more canine species than feline. Wild dogs, golden wolves, and jackals and hyenas dominate the highlands and plains. Resource-wise, Eritrea actually has a pretty decent diversified economy. However, two things they thrive off of are livestock and gold, specifically sheep and goats in the livestock. Gold has actually been mined here for centuries and makes up about 15% or so of the exports. Hold on to your horses though. Even though they have a lot of gold, they still have quite a ways to go in terms of economic development, which gets a little controversial. Let's discuss that in. Okay, so like mentioned before, Eritreans and Ethiopians will admit that they both have incredibly similar cultures, traditions, belief systems, and even language structures. In every reasonable sense, they are kind of like cousins. However, do not call Eritreans Ethiopians. First of all, the country has about 6.5 million people and has doubled its population since the 1990s. The country is made up of 9 distinct ethnic groups, the largest ones being the Tigrinya at 55% and Tigray at 30%, and the remainder come from groups like the Saho, Kunama, Bilen, Rashaida, and others. Eritrea is one of the only 2 countries that uses the only indigenous African writing system in the world that's still used, which, by the way, side note,
an abugida is an alpha-syllabic writing system similar to Arabic and Hebrew that incorporates consonant-vowel clusters into syllable character units. The word abugida even came from 4 letters of the Ge'ez alphabet: A, Bu, Gi, and Da.
So basically, if you want to write something like the word house, it would kind of look something like this. The writing system is used primarily to write Tigrinya, Tigray, and Amharic in Ethiopia. All 3 languages are pretty similar, and if they listen really hard, Eritreans and Ethiopians that speak these languages can kind of understand each other enough to get by. It's kind of like Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. Now here's the thing, when Eritreans and Ethiopians meet each other, the first question they typically ask is, "Are you Habesha?" And then they ask which country they're from. So what exactly is Habesha? Habesha people are incredibly unique Semitic mixed African peoples that can only be found in this area. Over millennia, Semitic peoples have mixed in and created this beautiful new group of people found nowhere else, the Habesha. A little bit over half the population adheres to Christianity, predominantly the Coptic Eritrean Orthodox Church, whereas the majority of the remaining population is mostly Sunni Muslim. They also use the Type-C plug outlet, they drive on the right side of the road, and the currency is the nafka. Now, because of the Italian occupation, Eritrea kind of has like a little bit of an Italian twang to it, where some of the buildings and shops have clearly influenced architectural styles. Pizza shops, cafes, and cappuccino and espresso are all over, and many of the residents, especially the older generation in urban areas, can actually still speak and understand Italian. Okay, now this is where the distinctions are really going to start to come out. Let's talk politics. Eritrea kind of gets a bad label from the West because of some of the harsh policies that the government adheres to. Some even have gone so far as to label it as the North Korea of Africa. In the simplest way I can put this, the modern day area of Eritrea was most likely the site of the ancient land of Punt. Fast forward after centuries of other empires and nations taking over until they finally got their independence from Ethiopia in 1993. Guys, I'm on a time constraint. We don't have time for full historical lessons. Just look it up yourselves. Basically, to this day, Isaias Afwerki has been the president since independence in 1993, and the country operates in a strange one-party system that has, how can I put this, rather intense social policies. Everybody, male or female, are required to serve military conscription by the age of 18 and continue with national service. It's estimated that about a third of the country's military in the war against Ethiopia were actually women. Originally, national service was supposed to be for 18 months, but the policy changed and now it's kind of like an indefinite amount of time until the government deems complete. This has been a huge hotbed of controversy for many of the citizens, since some have ended up serving for years and really have no say in it. This has also caused quite a few Eritreans to leave on a daily basis to avoid the conscription laws. The government defends itself by saying that they strongly emphasize the strength and wealth of a unified nation that works moving forward together. This is also one of the reasons why Eritrea doesn't accept most forms of foreign aid, believing that handouts will enable the citizens into an unhealthy dependency. The government has actually kind of done a relatively good job at prioritizing the national budget towards education and health, though. This has in return helped them reach their goals of essentially eradicating polio and most cases of malaria in the entire country. The problem, though, is that there's almost no economic movement, especially in the private sector, with an average annual income of around $600 a year. So essentially, the people are fairly healthy, but poor. Cycling is a popular sport out here, though, and they actually host one of the most difficult routes in the world, the Asmara Karen Road. A lot of people from all over the world like cycling that road for some reason. Let's talk more about the people who are kind of interact with this country, shall we? Eritrea is kind of, well, if we're going to be completely honest, let's just say they kind of isolate themselves a little bit. They've made enemies with pretty much all of their neighbors, you know, with battles and border disputes and wars with all of them, even Yemen. However, recently Sudan has been kind of fixing up things a little bit, but they still have some issues. This means that they kind of have to look outwards for diplomacy. Now here's the most confusing circumstance. For some reason, they are friendly with both Israel and Iran. The president has gone to Israel for medical treatments and conducts business with them well, but also has visited the president of Iran and has made friendly ties with them. But they are also an observer state of the Arab League. So essentially, they do have some friends, but they just can't be in a room with all their friends at the same time. Some Eritreans might say that on a fiscal level, Qatar and China might be their close friends, but not necessarily their best, since they've invested heavily in their commerce and business. It's complicated. Their best friends are kind of themselves, honestly. In conclusion, yes, Eritrea has some issues, no denying that, but it's also a land overflowing with deep ancient history infused with Semitic, African influences, coastal sea lovers, with a few leftover shavings of Italian spice mixed in there. And that's pretty unique, isn't it?
That there are some that are also in the line of Shem. So, as we're looking at this, the groups and moving forward, remember Ethiopian Jews, they're from Solomon. There's another example of that. So, here, now we see Ramah, and Ramah is Yemen, okay? And then I want to move on to Sheba and Dedan, the sons of Ramah. And Sheba and Dedan is Saudi Arabia, okay? This is Saudi Arabian flag and the Saudi Arabian location. Now, Saudi Arabia is important because they're going to be in end-time prophecy. It says that the young lions of Sheba and Dedan stand off and do nothing. They just protest as the Magog War begins. As Russia begins to come in and Turkey begins to attack, that the young lions, they do nothing. They just stand up. This is Saudi Arabia. And we do have connections to Saudi Arabia. This was our staging area for the Gulf War prior to Kuwait, when we were going into Kuwait. The interesting thing is, with everything kicking off, intelligence is saying, again, there's going to be another big war in the Middle East. They're talking this is the staging area for this one. It's not going to be Kuwait. It's not going to be Qatar. It's going to be here, Saudi Arabia again. And so here you're going to have American troops sitting in Sheba and Dedan protesting. And I was talking to a major I know in the Marine Corps who is intelligence, and we were talking about this, and I said, let me take a guess where the staging area you guys are planning. And I go, Saudi Arabia. And he's like, how do you know? And I go, it's right in the Bible. You know? And I go, but you know what's going to happen? He goes, what? And he's a Christian. And I go, you're going to get there, stage, and do nothing. You're going to protest this whole thing when it goes down. And so he found that fascinating. And even though he's a Christian, he didn't realize it was right in the Bible. And he was so like blown away that I found the staging area by reading Ezekiel 38. So that should tell you something, that they already know that's the staging area. That means we're pretty close to the Ezekiel 38 war. Now, Teka is Tunisia. Oh, and this is a Saudi Arabian family. This is your typical Saudi Arabian family, not the royal family. So now Tunisia, Sabtega, again, the Tunisian flag and the location like we talked, and then the Tunisian people, and this is them celebrating their independence. And again, it's a very mixed culture. As you're looking at it, it's not your typical Arab culture. If you didn't know, you could almost say like maybe she's Hispanic. There's a lot of features that are the same. It's very interesting to look at how Native Americans and Hispanics and all that, they have these connections to other parts of the world. We're going to jump down now to verses 13 and 14, because we're going to come back, remember, next week for 8 through 12. But 13 and 14 say, Mitzrayim begot Ludim, Anamin, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, and Kasuhim, from whom came the Philistines and the Kaphtorim. Now, we're going to look at these. Ludim is part of Lydia. Okay, this is Lydia. And Lydia is, as you look at it, here it is right here. See the Black Sea, Mediterranean Sea. It's actually Turkey. And there's a Turkish flag, but here's the Turkish land. And so it's this region here. It is Turkey. And the closest you can find, because the people Ludim have been blended in and they don't look the same, but you can find historically is this right here. And so you can find writings and carvings of this and how they looked, all right? So that's Ludim, which actually means Lydians. When it translates in the Bible, Lydians. Anamim will later be known as Anam, A-N-O-M, and will be the first king of the first dynasty of Egypt. Anam means son. His name is Osiris, O-S-W-I-R-I-S. Now you may be going, wait, time out, Levi. That sounds familiar. That sounds like Osiris. Well, you're correct, because he becomes Osiris. And so what we'll see is that Anamim, they deify Anamim and they deify his son, and Anamim becomes Amun-Ra. So here he is in the hieroglyphic as the king right here. And here's another statue of him. So this is what he looks like. And then they deify him to become Amun-Ra. And so here's his temple. This is the temple of Amun-Ra. And this is what Amun-Ra looks like right here. Now, if you've seen like Stargate, this is actually in Stargate. You know, they show this and that movie with Kurt Russell. And then you see these guys, the symbol, oh, it's a cross. No, it's not a cross. It's actually pagan. And we'll get into that later. And then here's another rendition of him. And if you notice the serpent, and then now go to the other one. So here's another rendition of Amun-Ra. And then here's his son, and then his son, Osiris, who always depicted as green. I don't know if he has to do with death, and I figured that's why he's green. Maybe he was an ill child. That look into why he's green. I didn't look into it. Here's another rendition of him. So here's a statue of him and how he looked. And then here's him deified, how they deified and make him look green and the symbols and all that stuff. Here's the thing too, when it comes to this, there's another character that's a god of Egypt that they claim is a god, and his name is Khnum, C-H-N-U-M, Khnum, all right? And he was told under Egyptian history, it says that he's the original creator of Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, and he is the water god of the Nile. And he's depicted like this, with a goat's head and a human body. And if you look at the next one, again, the goat's head, the human body. And we go, well, that's Baphomet. You know, like we see the satanic Baphomet. Well, it's similar. And the thing is that this one here actually is Ham, the son of Noah, who became deified. They deified him later and made him look like this. See, the thing is you got to remember, Noah lived 900 some years. His sons live about 400 and some years. And so they become what's called the immortal ones in these cultures. And you hear these legends of the immortal ones, all right? And we're going to look at these a little bit more as we get forward into some of the history. But they end up being deified and made into gods. And so a lot of cultures did this. We're going to look at another culture as we move forward, did the same thing with another person. And as we read time frames, here we're seeing the son of, but as we get to chapter 11 and we look at the Chronicles, it will say so-and-so lived this long and so-and-so lived this long and this long. And we start to see that the longevity of life is going down, going down, going down, going down. They were considered the immortals. So this is Ham, deified. Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, they're Egypt. And so they're this land here. And that's all we know. It was very hard to find information, is Egypt. But Pathrusim, Pathrusim, and you can find it right in scripture here, Pathrusim, is also known as Pathros, Pathros, Pathros. This area of what's called Thebes, or Thebades, Egypt. And that's this right here. And it runs from Elephantine Island all the way up to this region here. And this is that whole region where he's known. See, there's the Nubia, the Nubians, like we talked about earlier. This is a key element right here, Elephantine Island. This is important, this place right here, okay? Now, the reason it's important, I'm going to explain it, because this next picture here, this is Elephantine Island area, okay? Elephantine Island is where Bible scholars believe this is where the Ark of the Covenant is right now. When things started to happen where Babylon was coming in and Jeremiah, we actually find in Chronicles that there's a pharaoh. His name is Necho, and he's an Ethiopian pharaoh. He's Ethiopian that becomes pharaoh, and he goes to fight the Assyrian, and Josiah wants to meet him because Josiah knows he's got the Ark of the Covenant. And so Necho says to Josiah, what do I have to do with you? I have heard from the mouth of God to go fight the Assyrian. So we got to think Old Testament. Nowadays, we have the Holy Spirit in us. He speaks directly to us because Jesus died on the cross, tore the veil. But what we see is that this Pharaoh heard directly from the mouth of God. Well, to hear directly from the mouth of God in the Old Testament, what did you have to have? The Ark of the Covenant. Because the Holy Spirit would come upon a prophet and they would hear from the prophet. But they're actually hearing from the mouth of God. And we see this further shown in Acts chapter 8 when we see that we have this Ethiopian eunuch that is very confused by the scrolls of Isaiah until Philip comes and explains it to him. And again, we have to think that culture, because we think United States, we're like, okay, I'm just going down to Barnes & Nobles. I'm going to buy me a Bible. I'm going to figure this out, right? Or I'm just going to go to a bookstore. It doesn't work that way. You have to be connected to the Jewish culture. You have to be connected to a way to get to the scrolls. And then so the whole thing is broken down, and you will find this whole connection that they have the Ark of the Covenant. And there's this whole practice that's done on Elephantine Island where they act like they're the Levites. They carry it out to the water like the water is going to part. And they actually have a whole area that they hold it in, that they train a young man starting at 13 to be in charge of the Ark. And so he stays there for the rest of his life until he dies and food is brought to him. What the Bible says in Zephaniah, that the people of Ethiopia will carry the throne of Messiah. That's the prophecy when Jesus comes. Well, the top of the Ark of the Covenant is the throne. It's the mercy seat. This is important because it's connected here, all right? And then we have this next region here moving up the river so you can kind of see the areas of this. And then we get to Asut. This is Asut in Egypt. This is part of that region as well. And then you have Abydos, which is a desert region that's some archaeological digs and there's not much there. And then you have Aswan. Aswan, again, is another area with the rivers and some desert, but river area. Kasulim is the father of the Kaphtorim and the Philistines. And so we hear about the Philistines, David, Goliath fighting the Philistines being a problem. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought the Philistines were up in Israel. Well, yeah, they started in Egypt. They're Egyptian. And then they move up. Some Bible scholars believe they move into Cyprus. They leave, they go into Cyprus, they begin to grow, and then they come down into the Israeli area. And then that's when they're all in there. And as we learn forward, they start to get involved with certain things like giants, because that's where you get Goliath. And then later you find out in Samuel that David kills Goliath's sons and brother. And so when you hear the story of David and Goliath, if you guys are paying attention to that story, he picks up 5 smooth stones. Well, he knew he wasn't going to miss. So why did he pick up 5 smooth stones? Well, it turns out that Goliath has a brother and 3 kids. They were all there. So he's figuring he's going to have to fight 5 giants that day. 5 smooth stones. And so this brings us to the conclusion of this part of the study. I know it's kind of a history thing, and you may be like, well, Levi, what does this connect to do about growing with the Lord? Well, this is important to know where you come from. It's important to know your background and how this is all connected, and the importance of knowing that if someone comes and goes, well, I don't, really, we all came from Noah and his kids. Come on, this is ridiculous. Well, now you have evidence. Now you can show the evidence of where it all comes from. At this time, before we close in prayer, are there any questions from online or here that you want to ask? We're going to close in prayer, and my hope is very soon we will be all back together, fellowshipping and being a nice big group. Let me close in prayer. Lord Jesus, thank you for this time. Thank you for your word and the study. I pray that you would continue to work in us and grow in us. Keep us safe, keep us strong, and keep us focused on you, Lord. Thank you that these are here. And Lord, you put names in Scripture for a reason. It's not just to blow over or just to wonder what it's about, but you put it there for us to research and figure things out, Lord. And the answers are in there. So Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. Keep everyone safe. Lord, draw them close to you in these times that are difficult. In Jesus' name.